It has been said that those people that are searching for the city of happiness will find it in the state of mind. Oh, so profound. Okay, listen, my name is Wyne. I'm the Rabbi of Young Israel, Aish of Las Vegas. And thank you for joining us here on the Life is Great podcast and being part of our community. Today, we're talking about happiness. We have an obligation, an opportunity to live a great, happy, joyful life. So let's begin a little series on what the best way to do that is and how you can accomplish it in a relatively easy way. Now, remember, happiness is, according to Judaism, one of the most profound spiritual accomplishments. So it's not going to happen easily, at least not easily for most people. Yes, there are some people that were born with a little happier disposition. It is perhaps a little easier for them. I've spent a lifetime teaching people how to be happy, leading Jewish communities, building communities. And I will tell you, I've had a distinct advantage because yes, I think that God did make me a little happier than most. I even remember my mom, when she was visiting me in Israel, and I was about 20 years old, and we're waiting for the bus in the little, in the outskirts in the countryside, right next to the Dead Sea. And I say, "Hey, Mom, you want to see me jump across the road?" And she's thinking, "Oh, you'll jump across like the 20-foot road?" I go, "Sure." And then she goes, "Sure." And then I walk to the middle of the road. And I jump up like from one side of the middle of the road to the other side of the middle of the road. See, I go, "See, there you go." And she goes, "You were always such a happy kid." And so that's the idea. So some people are generally in a better mood. And some people are a little more moody, despondent, right? But nonetheless, it is the major spiritual accomplishment that we can do to be in a good mood. Because once you are in a good mood and you access the tools that allow you to be in a good mood, you end up living a great life. You really do. So we find that King Solomon, who was known as the wisest of all men, he said in Koheles, he said that the Almighty created man straightforward, but they invented many calculations. What are those many calculations? The rabbis explain they are the enemies of happiness. Pretty much life is a highway and you're going in a direction, okay? And we create problems for ourselves. I often quoting Dr. Stephen Marmar, who was the head of UCLA psychology department for many years, and that he said when asked, "How do you know that you've got the right therapist?" He said, "Because after 6 months, you recognize that you are the architect of all of your problems." Okay, so really a remarkable concept. I mean, thinking 6 months, right? That's a long time. If you hire a plumber and he doesn't fix it in an hour, you get a new plumber. But, your mind and your emotions are a little more complicated. We are the creators of our own problems. And that is because we have a tremendous ability to choose happy producing thoughts over non-happy producing thoughts. It's a much greater ability than we give ourselves credit for. So if you would like to live a really happy life, a joyful life, the absolute first thing you need to do is just make a commitment to choose more happy producing thoughts than non-happy producing thoughts. That is the first step. And by the way, it's the fum tzara agra, according to the effort is the reward, right? It's effort, but it's achievable. How do I know it's achievable? Because God commands us many times in the Torah. You should, rejoice in your holidays. Right? Serve God with joy. There's many times in the Torah in different ways that we are actually commanded to be happy. So there would never be a commandment from God, the one who created us, to be happy if that was not achievable. What many people do is they say, well, it's not really a commandment on emotions as it is a commandment on actions that will lead a person to being happy. So both work, by the way. You could say, fine, so God's commanding me to do actions that will lead me to living a happier life. So if you're waking up one day and you're really bothered, and by legitimate stuff, by the way, I'm not discounting anyone's pain and suffering in this world. Everyone has issues. So So if you're not stopping and saying, okay, I'm doing something to make myself happier, then you are nullifying a commandment. You're not, I'm not saying you're breaking, I'm not saying you're doing a sin, although I know there are some in Judaism that would say you're actually doing a sin. It's a sin to allow yourself to stay sad. But you're certainly nullifying, you're certainly not doing the positive commandments of engaging in activities that will make you happier. And the most basic activity is the activity of the choice of mind. Our basic choice. Am I thinking about happy producing thoughts or not? So let's talk about two cases of where you actually have significant things to worry about. You like, it's real. You have lousy stuff going on in your life. How do you deal with that and still be a happy person? So I want to give you two suggestions. The first suggestion is that you make an appointment with yourself to think about those issues. I'm not saying ignore issues. I'm not one of these guys who says, stick your head in the sand, be an ostrich, and things will go away. That's not my approach. My approach is much more take things at an appointed time and methodically deal with your issues. Then take that issue, put it in a box, put it on the shelf, and you'll come back to it at a later appointed time. In other words, developing the discipline of mind to say, right now I'm going to think about this, and later on I'm going to think about that, right? So you deal with it, put it in a box. Now, one time I'm laying in bed and, awake, trying to go to sleep, having a nice chat with my wife, and I'm telling her all these things. Yeah, you shouldn't look at your phone, because if you look at your phone, the screen, before you go to sleep, it's the blue light, and that wrecks your melatonin, and I get her all this stuff, right? And then she goes, well, okay, what happens if you got like a lot of anxiety? I go, let me ask ChatGPT and ruin my melatonin by doing the screen thing, like while I'm laying in bed. That's what I figured I'd do. And of course it says, you should do a brain dump. What's a brain dump? So it said, take a piece of paper before you go to bed, write down all the things that are bothering you and all your anxieties, like write it all out and say, okay, I'm going to deal with this like tomorrow. Okay. So I never heard the expression, but then, who's laying in bed, counting sheep and then getting up and taking a pen and paper and like writing it. Okay. I don't know who was doing that, but the idea is correct. The idea is that you take all of your anxieties and issues that you're going to worry about and say, I will deal with this at an appointed time. And then you can say, see, I've already started to deal with it. I don't have to worry about it now. Okay. That is very effective. The other thing that's crucially important is, you've always got to see the silver lining in every situation. You've got to reframe things that you consider bad. You've got to find a way to see the good in them. There's a famous story by Zig Ziglar. It's, he used to tell the story how one time when he was speaking, he was, there was a lady on the side of the stage and pulled him over and said, I can't stand my job. I hate it so much. I can't stand going to work. There's nothing good about it. And he said, well, tell me, do they pay you work? Oh, yeah, they do pay. Oh, you like to get paid? I do. Yeah, they get. Oh, you like to get paid? Oh, did they give you benefits? Oh, yeah, there are benefits. Tell me that you work indoors. Oh, I do work indoors. And is it air conditioning indoors? And yeah, it is air conditioning. Do you like that? You think there's other people that would actually want your job? Yeah, there are other people who want my job. Okay, so you get paid, you get benefits, it's indoors, you get air conditioners, other people want your job. Your problem is you don't hate your job, you hate the attitude about your job. Okay, that's not the right accent, but you get the point. Okay, that was a lousy impersonation of Zig Ziglar, but you recognize what's going on here, right? It's like, yeah, I do get paid. If I didn't get paid, I wouldn't show up. But you're showing up, so there's got to be some reason that you're taking 10 hours of your day and you're showing up at work. That is much like pretty much every situation in our lives. A guy says, I can't stand my wife, can't stand her. Well, tell me something. What does she do for you? In the Talmud, there was the fellow, Rabbi Yossi, his wife did everything wrong to annoy him constantly. Like, she said, he said, I'd like potatoes, she'd make chicken. He'd say, anytime she'd make something, she'd burn it so it's barely edible. She yell at him, screaming at him. his students said, Rabbi, your wife is horrible. Why don't you divorce her? Get rid of her. He said, it's enough that she saves me from sin and gives me children, right? In other words, she gives me children. She raises my children, saves me from sin. Like, so I'm not floundering around, with other people, right? That's enough, right? In other words, he identified the two most important things for him. Now, evidently, if she would not raise his children and did not save him from sin, okay, maybe he would divorce her, right? But in other words, the idea is there's always something that you can find that is really good. Now, sometimes it is very, very difficult. There was a great man, Simon Wiesenthal. If you're from Los Angeles, and right on Pico Boulevard, you'll see the Simon Wiesenthal, Holocaust Center. And Simon Wiesenthal was an amazing person. He hunted down Nazis, in the 1940s and 50s and 60s and 70s. He hunted these Nazis down and who escaped Germany and brought them to justice. So right after the Second World War in the late 1945, 46, he was in a displaced persons camp. And there was a rabbi, Silver, who came in, who was like 75-year-old man at the time. And he comes in, he's giving encouragement to the people, the Jews that are like trying to rebuild their lives in these internment camps, while they can figure out where they're going to go and what they're going to do. And so he saw Simon Wiesenthal. He said, you're angry at God. And Wiesenthal said, I'm not angry at God. I'm angry at one of his servants, at his servants. And Rabbi Silver said, well, what happened? And Wiesenthal explained how he had personally witnessed that there was one man who somehow was able to get his hands on a siddur, on a prayer book. Okay. And it's great to speak to God every day, but if you can pray to God, the Hebrew, even the English, out of a prayer book, that's also could be an extremely elevating experience. And so there were all these people that wanted to use his prayer book, but rather, as opposed to just lending him the prayer book and then waiting until they finished taking it back, he rented out the prayer book for their small rations of soup and bread, of daily soup and bread. It didn't work out well for the guy because the guy ended up eating so much as a starved inmate. He ended up killing himself. But that's a side issue. And Wiesenthal said how disgusted it was that the man who was so religious, who had the prayer book, wouldn't just give his prayer book to others so that others could pray, but rather took their food and their small rations just, to lend out his prayer book. And then Rabbi Silver said the most magnificent thing. He said, tell me, why are you focusing on what the man insisted on getting from his prayer book? Why don't you focus on all of those people and what they were willing to give up just to have a few minutes to pray the formal prayers out of the book? And very often it's, we just got to see things from another perspective. See it from the other person's perspective, recognize it, change, identify. So sometimes it's seeing the silver lining in a situation and then focusing on the silver lining. And sometimes it's really just reframing the entire situation and say, wow, that was just amazing. These people are really, really dedicated. So here it is. First point today is your thoughts. You have a lot more control over your thoughts than you think you do. We have an obligation from the Torah, from God, to think happier thoughts and to do actions that will help us think happier thoughts. And when it's so difficult, take those thoughts, list them, put them on the side, and you are going to deal with them, but they're not going to override you at all times. Then you have to see the silver lining in every situation, right? And then the last one is, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, turn it around totally, and try and reframe situations. All of these things take practice, right? They take practice, and they are all effective in living a happier life. I'm Rabbi Yitzwyne. Hey, let's bring in Dana Rutherford. She's our producer. She has a couple questions that some of you have sent in, and which you can send me questions anytime you want. Email me at rabbiyitzwyne@gmail.com, which is RABBIYITZWYNE @gmail. And hello, Dana.
Hi.
Okay,
Hi,
a couple
everyone.
questions. Here we go.
All right, so the first question says, my little sister is going through a breakup. It's her first real breakup, and she's so upset. How can I help her see that how can I help her see that she can focus on the good and not slip into negativity in the future when she dates again?
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to pull the religious card, as I often like to do, because my first name is Rabbi. So remember, God runs the world. So if you're with somebody, you're supposed to be with that person. If it's pleasurable, and sometimes even when it's not so pleasurable, sometimes that's just your test. Okay. To be with that person. When a person splits up, then recognize that you've gained from the relationship, and you're also gaining from the breakup, the death, the divorce, whatever it is. Whatever. Many people break up for many reasons. Okay, there's benefits that you have. There's things you're learning, you're growing. So again, rather than focus on the pain and the loneliness that she's left with, she needs to focus on the potential, the things that she grew, how she did grow, and the things she can learn from the whole process. One of the remarkable things that always astounds me is people who have pets. You love your dog. People love their dogs. They love their cats, right? One of the things that you pretty much know almost for certainty when you get a dog or a cat, they're going to die on you. It's an amazing thing. They're going to die. Their lifespan is much shorter than yours. What happens when people have a pet and the pet dies? You know what most of them do? They get another pet. What's going on here? And a lot of times they're really sad. Like, especially with people without children, and they have a dog, and the dog dies. It's like they wanna do a burial for the dog. They want to say cottage for the dog. I mean, it's crazy, right? Because the dog is like their child. Because the pleasure of loving is so much greater than the pain of mourning, of the suffering, of the delusion, the splitting of a relationship. And I'm using the example of pets just because it's so common, but this is it for us. She has to realize that she's one step closer to finding the person she's going to grow old with, because you get what you are. You attract as good as you are. So if she can become a bigger, better, more a deeper person from this experience, she'll get something that's much greater than what she had, and that's what she has to focus on.
That's great. Thank you. The second question says, I probably shouldn't say too much about this topic because my husband listens to this podcast.
Tell him not to.
but what do you do when your significant other gets mad out of nowhere when they experience a slight inconvenience? How can I cope with their brief burst of rage and still stay happy myself without it wearing on me over time?
It's really tough because people that have brief bursts of rage, they need help, right? So that's gonna and is it gonna wear over on time? Like wear on a person over time? Yes, it's gonna wear on the person. It just is. So I think that the thing is to really become real, that this is a bad thing. And she can blame her husband and make him feel like a jerk and she can victimize herself. Or she can say that, again, the Almighty put me with this person in order to do my best to support him as he changes. She's not going to change him, but she can support him. The support that she gives him to change, to get in control of his anger, can be a life-changing experience for him and beneficial for them. And if they have children and family, whatnot, it could break cycles of, many people, the reason they have rage is because their parents had rage and grandparents had rage, right? So what she needs to do is when he's calm, she needs to express to him an enormous amount of support for him and comfort. And then say, listen, I am here for you. Sometimes you get angry. You get rageful, you don't vengeful, you don't even know when this is happening, but I'm here for you. If you want to work on this, I'm by your side and I'm going to work with you on this. And maybe it might mean going to therapy, but it might mean together reading books on anger and rage and, kind of going through it together. But, very often, we have someone in our life that has legitimate problems. Sometimes it's a person, you're living with a person. There's a reason why there's an Al-Anon, right? There's the Alcoholics Anonymous, person, group for the non-alcoholics, but the people who live with alcoholics, because the support system that we can give people with problems is very, very valuable. You can't change people. but you can change yourself and you can provide support. So she can get a lot of comfort knowing that she's doing her best to support him. And that will actually help her deal with those outbursts. And God willing, they will become fewer and far between. Okay. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dana. Thank you for joining us. I'm Rabbi Yitzwyne. You're part of the Young Life is Great community. And we'll see you soon.